Hello and welcome to my action research proposal. My name is Menika Murthy. My student ID is 177-03651. I am currently doing RDEP in 2019 of semester 2H. My email address is 177-03651@student.westernsydney.au, and this proposal will be linked to my Weebly, which will be menikamurthy.weebly.com. The following action research project was undertaken with an early stage 1 kindergarten class at Newington Public School in Newington. The aim of my project was to research if engagement during science could be increased through multi-modality learning for all abilities to ensure positive development in academic achievement. Newington Public School is located in Sydney's western suburbs in the area of Newington, with majority of its residents being of middle-class socioeconomic status. With a large enrolment count of 897 students, comes a large percentage of students with a language background other than English. In this case, 79% of students are from a LBOTE. During my 6 weeks of practicum at Newington, I was allocated to an early stage 1 kindergarten class called KM, which was largely diverse in terms of multiculturalism and had a variety of learning abilities as students were being introduced to their first year of learning. The class was on a smaller side, only having 19 students, and I had one student with physical disability, one who had been diagnosed with ADHD, and a student who was recently accepted into the Gifted and Talented program. I selected my action research topic using hands-on experiential learning and multimodality learning to engage students because I felt as if this catered to the diverse learning abilities in my class. I observed a lack of engagement and a lack of differentiation in the classroom during science periods and decided that this action research project was best suited for this group of students. Some of my observations included students being off task, interrupting the person next to them, fast finishers completing their exercise and not having anything to do, and slow finishers showing minimal interest and improvement in their classwork. Throughout my practical experience in KM, I observed and noticed a lack of hands-on experiential learning during science lessons. There was minimal differentiation and low engagement from students during lessons. The science lessons that I observed prior to my teaching in the classroom was content-heavy, which meant students were experimenting and experiencing less and forgetting more. According to John Dewey, by giving pupils something to do, not something to learn, the doing is such of a nature as to demand thinking. Learning naturally results. This means that by getting students to experience science, the learning would come naturally. This ties into research by David Kolb and John Dewey on the benefits of experiential learning. It also was a reflection of my own personal teaching pedagogy and philosophy about promoting and implementing hands-on learning experiences into the classroom and encouraging multimodality learning experiences for all learning abilities. This meant that by ensuring my lessons were interactive, I would be providing students the opportunity for involvement and long-term engagement from the MEE framework. For this action research project, full consent was required and was obtained from my mentor teacher and from the school principal or deputy principal. I was instructed by my tutor that it was not required for me to receive consent from each individual parent, as the school has already received consent as long as pseudonyms were used and photos with students' faces were blurred or covered within the collected data. My collected data included written and photo observations, conversational data, work samples, and examples of student self-assessment. When it comes to my key findings, there was several different aspects which I found through my research. The first was noticeable higher engagement, so the big long-term E in the Fair Go MEE 2006 framework during science lessons compared to other lessons. The second one was students absorbing information and they were able to later recall information from initial lessons up to 2 weeks later. The third of my key findings was that experiential learning catered towards variety of learning abilities, especially towards 3 focus students, and showed positive results for each of these students. The last of my key findings was that students grew more comfortable with delegation of roles within groups, turn taking, and also with public speaking. Over the 5 weeks of teaching this science subject, I was able to collect 5 different types of data. The first was formative assessment, which took place as a test, a pre-test, before the start of the science topic to find out what prior knowledge the students had, and whether it was something they had learned in school or something they had learned with their family or with their friends. With that, I collected work samples which were done after as post-lesson consolidation activities. I collected conversational data between students and also conversational data between myself and my students. I also collected observations, which was done in the form of photos, videos. Lastly, I used self-assessment at the end of each lesson to figure out where students were placed in terms of their learning and whether they have grasped or understood the content that was taught over that period of the lesson. I would then take these results, put them up onto a smartboard, and save them for my own monitoring and progression purposes. Prior to the start of this science topic, physical world, I got students to complete a pre-test which gave me important information as to whether or not they had any prior knowledge on this topic, whether it was learned in school or at home in their own time. I used this as a formative assessment. A pre-test was used to gather information and would inform how to teach science content on the physical world topic. My results showed a variety of knowledge from students. Due to this being kindergarten's first introduction of science and scientific language, results varied dramatically. The pre-test highlighted that students had little information taught during school, but some had picked up knowledge over documentaries or discussion with family. The following images of the formative assessment pre-test shows results from 3 students of varying learning ability. Image 1 was from an emergent learner, Image 2 from a sound learner, and Image 3 from an advanced learner. Each test highlights their prior knowledge, their thought process while answering questions on the test. Test paper 1 showed correct knowledge of push and pull. Test paper 2 showed correct knowledge of push and pull, and some knowledge on gravity. Student 2 was able to call upon own learnt knowledge about gravity from a documentary. Test paper 3 is the advanced learner was able to provide correct knowledge on push, pull, gravity, and also motion. These topics were all to be discussed during our science topic. This data was incredibly important when it came to planning and implementing my hands-on lessons for these 3 learners and learners who fell into the same categories as these 3 which were presented in my formative assessment. Students got the chance in each science lesson to use concrete materials and conduct experiments. Students worked together to understand their aim and what they were required to do. Effective engagement of students was seen through their discussions, positive attitudes to the activity, and their groups when completing the task. Observations have been documented through photos which highlight hands-on experiential learning. Students use concrete materials and outdoor experiences to engage into content. By doing this, students were provided with effective engagement opportunities. The first set of photos shows students doing tug-of-war outside, which gave them hands-on experiential learning experience of playing a game while using the forces of push and pull. Students would then ask questions which related directly to the content of the game to ensure that they had understood the learning behind it. These images depict students using concrete materials from around the classroom to create ramps to test motion and force. Students worked in groups and each got a chance to present their ideas to their team. Once they presented their ideas, students were able to decide which ramp would work the best with their toy car. They would then present to the class and explained their ideas. This showed student understanding of the activity and gave students a chance to work on their public speaking regarding scientific concepts. Students experienced force and motion through 10-pin bowling. By rolling the ball with various speeds, students were able to understand what happens when one pin hits another pin, as well as with the ball. Hands-on experiential learning of fast and slow push being applied showed their understanding and ability to differentiate between the two forces. This activity was the students' first introduction to basic coding through experiential learning. We used Sparrow robots, which created high engagement as students were interested in the activity. This activity was one of their first opportunities to use ICT in the classroom. They used both the iPad and also the Sparrow robot. I was able to observe positive group work and high interest from all students. On the final lesson of the physical word topic, students created their own toys using sparrows, recycled materials, and paper from around the room. Students worked in groups to come up with a toy, which they then used iPads to control their sparrow as their further development for coding. I was able to observe emergent students speaking up and giving their thoughts and ideas. I also observed teamwork and motivated learning. Students were incredibly engaged in this activity and enjoyed coming up with their own creations. Work samples were an important part of the data collection process. According to John Dewey, we do not learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. After each hands-on learning experience, students would reflect by completing a consolidation activity, which I collected and used as work samples. Therefore, all activities were followed with written or spoken consolidation. This may have been in the form of a worksheet or a short group presentation. The last lesson, where students were designing their own toy, each group stood up and delivered their presentation to the rest of the class. This allowed students to consolidate their learning and to reflect on their group work and participation. Written activities were used to ensure all students had understood the activity that had taken place. The first image shows that students had an understanding of the differences between push and pull. They were to separate each of the pictures into the correct boxes to show that they had understood that certain things were pushed and certain things got pulled. In image 2 is a work sample from after the 10-pin bowling learning experience, which produced evidence of which students were understanding the concept of force and how fast and slow pushes changed the speed in which the ball hit the pins and the pins hit the floor. As previously mentioned, students of this age group have minimal conversation between themselves. I collected some conversation between students. However, due to their age, they didn't have many conversations which started off between the two of them. Most of the conversations only occurred towards the last 2 lessons, where they were more comfortable with the concept. These conversations were recorded by me in a notebook, which I have converted for the purpose of this assignment. In saying that, when students were directly asked a question regarding the activity, they were able to respond, therefore creating some conversational data between myself and the students. This was also noted in a notebook and converted for the purpose of this assignment. The last piece of collected data was student self-assessment. So to end each lesson, students completed a self-assessment of their own learning. Since kindergarten needs modelled writing, I went with an approach which only required them to provide me with non-verbal cues. I asked students to indicate their learning experience and how they felt they went using thumbs up, thumbs down, and thumbs in the middle option. I got students to answer my question. I would ask them, do you think you learnt successfully? And they would give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle. This was then recorded onto a Google slide. Each lesson, therefore, I collected 5 weeks of student self-assessment. This was used by me to monitor the changes in student understanding of the content, and I also used this as an assistance on my own teaching of the topic for that week. These images show evidence of student self-assessment. By doing these in weekly intervals, student learning was followed and monitored to ensure that all students were understanding the content of the lesson. By using the thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle method, students would be able to respond non-verbally but still had the chance to assess their own learning. I was also able to assess and monitor my own teaching. Each week showed me different results. Some students would indicate that they were very confused, whereas some students would say that they've got it. These numbers started to increase for kids saying that they have got it, while started to decrease for students answering that they were very confused, which showed improvement and understanding of concepts being taught. My action research project has provided me with definite evidence that students who are engaged in learning are able to recall and remember more information. Experiential learning provides students of all learning abilities the opportunity to engage and challenge themselves whilst being supported in the classroom. Hands-on multi-modality for all learning abilities allowed students in the class to interact and decide how they experience learning. Science teaching involves more students when there is a chance for enjoyment and provides students with opportunities for long-term engagement. These positive results from my action research have a massive impact on my future teaching of not only science, but of all my other subjects, as it shows the benefits of multimodality learning within the classroom and its benefits on all types of learners. In this slide, you will be able to see my exchange with other RDEP group members regarding the assignment. We talked to each other throughout the process and helped each other when we needed any assistance. On this slide, you will see the questions and answers for our group's focus questions. Thank you for watching and listening to my RDEP action research proposal.